Hello, amateurs. Welcome to episode 103 of the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some terrific rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm your host, Tim, and I've got another amazing guest for you today. He's played in Hong Kong, he's vice president of Stewart's Melville RFC, and he does a huge amount to make our game accessible to everyone. Please welcome Mr. Jason Conlin. Jason, how are you?
Very good, Tim. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Welcome to the show. And I'd introduce you there as Stewart's Melville Vice President. But tell me, how many people use the full name for the club?
Not enough. We're certainly changing that aspect and getting it out there a lot more. It's a bit of, I would say, a sleeping giant of a club that's coming back into fashion because of what we're trying to achieve with the greater, wider community.
Yeah, I mean, I've literally only ever heard people call it Stew Mel, which is a lovely name, but it's, the full thing is great as well.
Well, I'd love if you speak to some of the old guys, there's still the Melville and the Stewarts are still tides apart, but, they've been brought together and we've been together for a while now.
Absolutely. Now, I met you on the Great Rugger Run last year, and I got to visit the club. And it's an incredible setting. So I'd just love you to describe the setting and the views you get from the ground.
Well, it's a field of dreams, isn't it? It's the most wonderful outlook over the facade of the castle. Inverleith is just such a beautiful area, and we've got such a wide expanse of ground on both sides of the grandstand. And there's just nowhere better to be training or be part of. And we're very lucky to be able to see Easter Road very close by as well, which is great. But, it's a beautiful Edinburgh facade looking over the city centre, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and what about the stand you've got there? It struck me as just being one of the most beautiful stands that I've seen at a rugby ground.
Yeah, it's a very old stand, which is we're currently doing a bit of a refurb on, but yes, one of the first Scottish internationals were played at Inverleith back in the day, and it's been a fantastic ground, and many a great game has been played there over the years with our local rivals and international friends.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fantastic. We're going to come back to talk about loads more about Stew Mel, but I'd love to hear, how did you get into the game, Jason? What was your first time you pulled on the boots?
My first club was actually Stirling County as a mini rugby player. I grew up in a football family with both grandparents playing professional football. But my brother, who's a couple of years older than me and a few inches bigger than me, the both of us were not suited to the game. And we were very lucky one night. We were playing in a small place called Ashfield, which is near Dunblane. And we were playing with our cousins and just playing football in the kind of village square. And as always with Jim and I, my brother, we ended up boxing or fighting, and because we were just pretty rubbish at the game. And the president at the time, whose name eludes me, from Stirling County, watched the fracas that went on, and he came out of his house and he walked over to my brother and I and said, "Boys, football's not for you. However, rugby is. I'll see you at Bridge Hall on Sunday. Get yourself down." And that's where it began. Just someone watching us taking each other out consistently, and rugby was much better suited towards us.
That's a great story. I love that. So tell me a bit more about your early days playing, Jason. What position were you, and where else did you play?
Well, I was always a rather large individual, and liked. My father always said I liked running in straight lines, sort of the old Maori or Tongan sidestep. I had that in abundance, and I just ran through people. So that was my early days, and mini rugby then. So you're talking 1978. So you're talking that mini rugby was maybe 7-a-side, more akin to the smaller game, and I just ran through people, and Bridge Hall, it was fantastic. And I always remember, actually, we had a girl in the team. Now, going back to 1978, that was quite rare, but she was a fantastic player. And Stirling, was always at the forefront of doing these sort of things. And she just joined us, and she played every game. And it was just brilliant to have. And we came to Edinburgh quite a lot, played Royal High, came through and played all the different clubs through here. So that was my first interest and getting into it. But yeah, I was always more destructive rather than creative.
Okay, I've got 2 follow-up questions there. Do you know if the girl carried on playing into senior rugby or not?
I don't. I think there was an issue going back when we got to, obviously, as she matured and we were maturing. I left the club about when I was 10 and moved through to Edinburgh, so I didn't follow up. But I think there was an issue with changing rooms and her taking part and everything, and I think potentially it fell away. Luckily, you know, we're much more progressive these days, and we've got some fantastic women rugby players, which is great to see.
Yeah, okay, so the second follow-up question is, whenever I meet somebody that's played rugby, I try and get a feel for what kind of a player they were. And the way you've described yourself there was exactly what I thought about you. Did that continue into your adult playing career?
100%. I was devastating over 5 yards. Although I was very lucky in my time at Stewart's Melville. I played with Stewart's Melville between 93 and 2008, 2009. And we had a very, very good 7 side with Nicky Penny, Fraser Pollock, Graham Burns, you know, Spike Milligan, Kenny Milligan. So we had a fantastic team of 7s, and we did very well in the 7 circuit. So I was always there to cause a bit of a problem in the scrum, and usually take two men to bring me down, which obviously left space for Nicky and Kenny to score the tries out in the wing.
Yeah, fantastic. So what position were you in 15s?
So I varied. So under 15s, I played hooker and normally played in the hooking side. After that, I moved to the back row and I played 7 or 8 in the back row till I went to New Zealand. I went to New Zealand after I finished school and played rugby in New Zealand. And I was hoping to play back row, but when I got to the first training session, they said, "Son, that's your back row up there." And I went, I'll play hooker then, and moved back to hooker. So I fluctuated between the two, between back row and front row hooker.
Amazing. So how long were you in New Zealand for?
So I didn't get into the Scottish Schools touring side that year, which was unfortunate. I'd played for Edinburgh and we'd won every game that year. But unfortunately, I didn't get selected. So an individual you may know, Bruce Hay, former British Lion and Boroughmuir player, who I'd never met before, came up to me after selection and was appalled that I didn't even get a trial. So he said, "If you want to go play in New Zealand, I'll set you up and you can go and play in New Zealand." And myself and a guy called Dougal Wilson, who we both played for Portobello High School at the time, both decided that we would go across and take our chances and take the experience to play in Wellington, New Zealand.
Oh, and yeah, carry on. Tell me, what was that experience like?
It was just unbelievable. I'd gone over there just as I was 17, just finished 6 years at school, went across, got a job as a salesman selling sandwiches around the business district of Wellington. Played for a club called Poniki, which was fantastic. So it had some great players. I ended up playing for the under-21s with Junior Tanutu. Junior became obviously an All Black and number 9. Scotty Keith was in the All Black setup at the time. Hinnie Tanu was Junior's bigger brother, who was just a larger-than-life character. So I was very lucky in that under-21 side. Pretty much destroyed the Scottish School side or the Wellington side at the time. So yeah, I was very lucky to get selected to play for Wellington as well. So I had an extended stay there. So I played for Poniki under-21s. I got selected for Wellington under-21s as well.
Wow. I mean, as a young man in particular, that must have been such a character building experience. Is that how it was?
Yeah, 100%. I think rugby has given me an awful lot. You know, I have to hark back to my time at Portobello, and the people from Portobello Rugby Club were just immense to me. looking after me through certain circumstances, which was fantastic. So the club's always, rugby's always been very, very good to me, which I think has laid foundations to what I'm trying to do now. But I had such an experience in Wellington. I ended up playing against or scrummaging against the All Blacks before the second test against Argentina in 1988. And because they wanted live scrummaging, the Argentinians were, renowned scrummagers at the time. So they asked to do live scrummaging. So the All Blacks were training at Pony Cay in Haitaitai. So we got to scrummage against the All Blacks, and there's some stories I can tell you about them. But going back to on that point, that Thursday we trained live. We had a boxing match, which I thought I was going to die in as my life flashed before my eyes. But Thursday night we went over to the hotel, and the All Blacks hosted us. And they all just sat there in the dining room, and we all just sat them having a few beers before a test on the Saturday, which was amazing.
Wow, that's incredible. Throw a few names at me, Jason. What were some of the All Blacks that were playing at that time?
Well, Smoking Joe Stanley, you had the Kerwin, you had the Wetton brothers, you had Zinzan Brook. You just had the team, one of the best All Black teams of all time. And actually, Warren Gatland played hooker that day, or was playing hooker for that test. I think Fitzpatrick had been dropped. So I was playing hooker, and we scrummaged against them. And I remember Steve McDowell and Lowe was on both props, and I had the Bull, who was a policeman, on one side. I can't remember who my other prop was, but Bull stood up in the middle of a scrum and punched Big Louie out, which caused a huge fracas. I'm just standing there like that, close my eyes, going, "Oh God, don't hit me! Please don't hit me!" It was a great experience. Great experience.
Oh my goodness. Well, I've probably got another 1,000 questions that I could ask you about this, but I feel like we should probably move on. So let me ask you a question. What does "once a Loon, always a Loon" mean to you?
So that's a really interesting question, because when I moved to Hong Kong, I joined Kowloon, and at the time the head coach was Joe Shaw, and Joe Shaw now of Saracens. And Joe has this culture, and he's built this culture, which is pretty much what the Saracens culture is right now, which is, it's us against them. It's, we build a culture within, we look after each other. There's a brotherhood towards that, and it's everybody else against us. And that's what Loon's all about. It's about us against everybody else, and it's a brotherhood.
Brilliant. So tell me a bit about your time at Kowloon. Like, how long were you there? What was your sort of role while you were there?
So I took a chance to go across to Hong Kong. I'd been headhunted to go on a work position. So I was 39 at the time. I'd actually just come out of retirement and gone back to play for Portobello for a year, and we did really well. And I was player coach at Portobello, and I loved that experience playing back at my old club. But I went out there, so, in a new country, not knowing very many people, I contacted a few friends. And it was actually Bruce Aitchison who connected me with Kowloon, because Aitchy had played out at Kowloon. And I was told to get in touch with Kevin McMahon, John the Bruce, all Scots, clearly all Scotsmen, and there is a big Scottish mafia out in Hong Kong. So that Kowloon was my team, and I arrived on a Friday night. I was out with a working night out on a Friday. I had to meet Kevin McMahon, who was the chairman at the time, on a Saturday morning. I sat down with him. We had a chat. I was a bit hungover. And I said, this is what I've done. This is my background. I'm keen to get involved in coaching and playing. This is, what I can bring to the team. And he said, brilliant, you're in. The first 15 are waiting for you 2 stores down. It's happy hour, cocktail hour. You're going out with them. And I was like, oh, right. And within 10 days, I was on tour to Vietnam with the Loon boys.
Fantastic. Now, I was just going to ask you to tell me a bit about the rugby culture there in Southeast Asia, which I think you've kind of touched on already, but anything more to add?
Yeah, I mean, Hong Kong is a big rugby town. It's a massive rugby town. There are more children play rugby in Hong Kong than people play rugby in Scotland. That gives you an insight to the size of the rugby community. It is massive. There are big clubs. There are lots of junior clubs. There are lots of mini rugby. There is, women's rugby is just as big, if not bigger, in Hong Kong. It's just a fantastic place to be. And with rugby being at the heart of a lot of things that go on, it was a perfect place for me to end up.
It sounds incredible. I had no idea it was that popular in Hong Kong. Now, I've never been to the Sevens there, but I understand it's a good time. What could I expect at the Sevens if I ever visit?
A new liver. I still get the fear, the thought of another Sevens. There's nothing like it. It is an absolute lifetime experience that one has to take part in. You've got the teams start arriving on the Monday, so you've got Monday nights. You're out with all the teams coming in, because you've not just got the international teams. You've got the touring teams that are coming in. There's the Hong Kong Tens. There is the Kowloon Rugby Fest. So you've got lots of touring teams coming in. So they all start arriving, and there's usually dinners, and the St Andrew's Society and the Governor of Hong Kong, and you've got all these dinners Monday, Tuesday. You'll have Rugby Fest on the Wednesday, which is all the touring teams coming in. Then a big dinner on the Wednesday night. The Hong Kong Tens conclude on a Thursday, and then you start on the Friday night with the preliminary rounds of the Sevens. You have to be in the South Stand by 7:30 in the morning if you're going to get in. It's full, so the South Stand will be full by 7:30 in the morning. Everybody wearing their costumes, and you daren't leave, because if you left, you don't get back in. You could be waiting 3 or 4 hours to get back in. So it is an absolute marathon of fun and laughter, and way too much drinking. And Sunday is the finals, which usually turns into a kind of rest day. Take the family, everybody gets involved, watching some of the best teams and some of the best sport you're going to see around. And my last few years at Kowloon, I was chairman. So I was lucky enough to, hand out the trophies, be in the box, get to meet the players and some of the other guys. So it's just an experience that everybody should try. And I'm hoping, obviously, after the pandemic and Hong Kong opening up now, that builds back to the experience that it was.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, I'm not sure whether you've made me feel excited about the thought of going or feeling terrified about what might happen. But I'll probably give it a sometime in my life.
Everybody always returns. You just can't help it. You just can't help it.
Okay, let's go. Let's take it back to Stew Mel now. We're jumping around a little bit, but tell me a bit about your playing days back at Stew Mel after you'd been to New Zealand.
Yeah, I played with Royal High, and I had a lot of good old friends that I played with back in those days. And Royal High were in the First Division. But a lot of those guys, Graham Duff, Alan Wardrop, all these guys, Mikey Whiteside, they all started to retire. So there was, I was looking to see what was next. Royal High dropped out of the First Division, and I was approached by Dougie Morgan, the late great Dougie Morgan of Stewart's Melville, who asked me to come and join Stewart's Melville at the time, who were also in the First Division. So that was me moving a mile along the road to Inverleith. And that started playing, that was early 20s, and, friendships for life. And that was me starting back then and starting with Stewart's Melville.
So how long were you playing there at the club? And was that Premiership, or what level was it?
Yeah, it was First Division, but I was there. So I think it was 93 arrived, and of course the game went professional when I was there, which really changed the whole dynamic of the club. We're affiliated to the school, of course, so there's no payment of players or things like that at the time. We weren't open to that, so we pretty much had our first 15 ripped apart, and they all went to Boroughmuirs, to the Watsons, to the Heriots, and there was pretty much about 3 of us left. Fraser Pollock, myself, and Gordon Rugby, and we decided to, stay around, but that ripped us apart. But we had the affiliation with the school. There was a good first 15 there, and we were very lucky in those days that, we could utilise the first 15 coming out. We struggled for that season, then we had the new first 15 coming out. But, it was a big learning curve for these young guys coming out of school and playing in the first division back in the day. So we ended up going down. We went 1, we went down to 2, we went down to 3, and we were in 3 and 3, and then 2, and then 1. So as they matured, and as we old guys hung on as long as we could, we got them back to, and they got themselves back to the first division, which was fantastic.
That's an amazing story. So what was your approach? What were you saying to these young guys to bring them through, to keep them encouraged, to keep them engaged, to then, go back up the leagues?
Well, I think that, and this comes back to the club and the community, at that time, you left school and you played for the seniors. That was the path. And, we see a lot of young players these days go off to university and you never see them again. Back then, it was an absolute desire. They got rugby probably at a higher level than they were ever going to get anywhere else. But they were a talented school team coming out. So they were playing at a high level. They were getting top coaching. And, they were getting to travel around Scotland playing at the Melroses and Galas and Hoyks, and we were getting a pounding, but it was a great learning curve for some of these players, and they all went on to have reasonable careers and enjoy it, which was fantastic for us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's really commendable to stick around and just stay with a club that meant so much to you. Now, I had Bill Folds on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he talked so warmly about how friendly the club is, and you've kind of alluded to it several times as well. What do you put that down to? How does that come about?
I played with Big Bill when I first joined the club. I think actually it's one of these things that when I came back from Hong Kong and speaking to Finlay Calder, and Finlay said, listen, our ambition is to make the club the friendliest club in Scotland and most welcoming. And I think that's the nature, going back to that time, was we were an FP club. So most of the players, with the exception of myself, were former pupils of the school. And that was that affiliation. But it was very recognisable at that professional era that the club was going to have to open up and become more community orientated, and to bring other players into it. So I think that's where it started. Bill, obviously, I'm sure he did talk about silver spoons and everything else, and I was a corpy as well. So, but it was about welcoming players in from other backgrounds and helping them find their way, whether it was through work or whatever. It's just old school, trying to help where we can in an amateur sport.
Yeah, fantastic, and it's clearly worked because like Bill, just talked so warmly about it. Now, something else we spoke about when I met you up there was something you're doing to encourage kids to come along on match days, or parents to bring kids along. What was that?
Well, I think for me, we need to be. The game is, I would say, struggling a bit for its identity in terms of who we bring into the game. We've got a lot of concussion problems and topics and debates around that. And my own opinion is we should separate the amateur away from the professional. But what we're trying to do is make the club the hub of the community again. So when we've got, we put movies on when we've got match days, make sure that we've got, kids are looking after our Stew Mel line and lionesses. our ball and ball girls, when we're having our first 15 game. And we're just saying, bring your family down. It's not, it's not an old club, where you come and have a beer. It's about, we're more interested in bringing the next generation in, bringing the families down, be a comfortable space to bring the family. And, we do colouring in, we've got movies on, we've got all sorts of different things just to make sure that people come down to watch the game, be part of the club, hear what we're doing with the club, and find it inclusive. And that's part and parcel of it. And we're trying to widen that up a wee bit.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of having movies on to keep the kids occupied while the first team's playing, so everybody wins. Basically, it sounds like a great idea. And you've spoken about it.
You can't guarantee that it's going to be nice sitting in that grandstand with a force 10 gale blowing across it. So we've always got to make sure we look after everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you've mentioned it a couple of times already. Being in the community. For Stew Mel, what does that mean? What kind of things are you up to, Jason?
Well, for me, rugby's for everyone, but I'm not convinced that we see it that way all the time. And so what we're trying to bring to the fore is, as I've said before, rugby has been good and has such a big heart, and people within rugby sport have such a big heart. So we're trying to make it inclusive. And by that, we mean everybody should have an ability to turn up at a club and get involved. Now, particularly with special needs children, that's not necessarily easy to be within a format and play within a certain situation. But that doesn't mean that they can't be part of the club. So we run community days as a kind of corporate social responsibility program, and we connect our sponsors into the mainstream school, so Mary Erskine or Stewart's Melville, and we train the pupils at the school through Scottish Disability Sport to be able to work with special needs children. And that allows our sponsors to be connected not just with the club, but also to the school. And what it allows us to do is to run these multi-sport programs with our community partners. So we use Spartans Football, for instance, who are 100 yards down the road. So we have the soccer side involved. We have Cricket Scotland and our cricket team involved. We have our hockey section involved. And again, that comes back to us being a club of collective parts, which rugby is one of. However, what we're trying to do is get these children to wear the red, black and gold, to have that opportunity to do that and recognise the club as their club, and whatever form that takes. And we don't change things; we just adapt things to the children and their requirements.
That sounds amazing. When did you start getting into this, and why is it so important to
you? So, funnily enough, I started at Kowloon in Hong Kong, and what I was doing, the game was quite professional in Hong Kong, and we were bringing out, first division players from England and Stewart's Melville players and other players, bring them out to Hong Kong, getting them onto graduate schemes. They had to have a first class degree. We would sort them out with a flat for the first year and everything else. And I was watching what we were doing with the game, and I just see it so one-dimensional in one way. And it's all about, providing for what is a professional sport now. And I went, it just feels totally imbalanced, and everything's going towards these, this group of 15 players that we're putting out on the first 15 on a Saturday. And that's not what it should be. I think we should have a bigger, wider club aspect. And, the playing side will come, and that's what we're trying to look at Stewart's Melville, but actually produce a club that benefits all. And then the playing side, the rugby side will be part of that. So I started running community days for special needs kids in Kowloon, and it was fantastic. We had some incredible successes. If you've got time, I can tell you about them. But it's just fantastic to work with everybody.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell me about some of the successes.
So we had one child who had autism, and he was down at one of our community days, and Phil Whitfield, who was our captain at the time, we make sure that everybody's, paired up for the day, so they get to know that individual. If they're shy, get a bit more comfortable, etc. And Phil had been running these kind of drills with this young man, and he was engaged, but there was a communication situation, not just because of Cantonese and English. The child just didn't talk. So Phil took it upon himself to start singing the instructions to the young boy, and right away the young boy started singing the instructions back, and which was fantastic. And so we thought, oh, well, we've made a connection here. What we weren't aware of at the time was a social worker who was standing on the touchline, who burst into floods of tears and was howling. And what we found out later was she's been working with this young boy for 5 years, and he's never said a word to us. They've never had a communication. So here we are, just off our captain's back. He's made this commentary, and this boy starts singing. He just starts singing everything, and it's about children being children and allowing children to be children. And that's why when we run the program here, we do it with the school children who are doing the training with the children. So both Stewart's Melville and Mary Erskine's pupils have been trained by Scottish Disability Sport to be able to work with these children. And we see such a change in dynamic when it's children working with children, peer on peer, kids being kids. And the feedback we get is that they've never, the parents, they've never had this opportunity to do that sort of thing.
Wow, that's amazing. I actually had chills go down my neck then when you were telling that story. So tell me about the kids at the school. Tell me about the benefits they're getting from being part of this program as well.
Well, one of the things that we found when I was doing it in Hong Kong is you're looking for volunteers all the time, and that can put a burden on the club and the resources. So we moved it into the schools, because obviously you've got a kind of constant development of pupils coming through, and we use the 5th and 6th years at Mary Erskine and Stewart's Melville. So they are just incredibly open, passionate individuals who love the opportunity of working with the children, and it gives them an insight into volunteering. For one, they do the Duke of Edinburgh, but now they're trained by Scottish Disability Sport. They can also work with us and do these programs towards their community hours towards the Duke of Edinburgh. But they're just so patient and inquisitive to how they can make things better for the children who are attending. And it's just remarkable to see the effect on them. And though the great thing for us is they're the future volunteers going on. When they leave school, go to university and get the first job, we hope they build in, volunteering going forward, so that we can continue the program and their wishes in terms of volunteering and further down the line.
Yeah, I can see it being really, really beneficial. What's the future of this program, Jason? Is there any expansion or slight differences? What are you thinking?
Well, I think we're very lucky to have a headmaster at Stewart's Melville and Anthony Simpson, who's a very progressive educator. And we as a club are looking to expand the program and create more opportunities for children. If I gave you my vision, it would be that every school, every mainstream school is connected to a special needs school, so that they can share resources. Now, government, unfortunately, is unlikely to provide the funding for that, but there is enough goodwill within corporates to be able to provide, and most businesses should, have a social responsibility to help within their community. So there's a massive scope for growing this campaign, and but the club can only do so much. So we intend to do as much as we can for our sponsors and for both campuses at the school at Stewart's Melville and Mary Erskine's.
Fabulous. Now, tell me a bit more about the club and how you're going this season, and what you hope for the future.
Yeah, I think this season's been trying for us. We obviously got promoted to National 1, and we've had quite a few injuries, quite a small squad this year, and we thought we had enough, but unfortunately it's not been that way. It's not through any lack of effort. The players have been phenomenal in their the way they've approached this year and what they're trying to learn from it. And you know, it's the old saying, failure's a cul-de-sac, everyone has to go down before achieving success. So this will be the foundation. We will go down this year, but we've learned from the experience, and we're already got the plans to bounce back, and how we're going to do that bounce back, and how we're going to develop the club further. And that can only come with the foundations that the committee and ourselves have put together to provide for the players and for the community involvement. And the more people that are involved, the better for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just in terms of like the appetite for rugby at Stew Mel, I know some clubs are struggling, some clubs are doing well. How are you finding it there? Are players still desperate to play?
Yeah, I think that they're desperate to play. There's just not enough of them. I think that's the bones of it. For sure, you know, Stewart's Melville want to put two sides out. We would love to put three sides out, but at the moment it's two sides, and sometimes that's difficult with injuries. So you're seeing a change in Scottish rugby for sure about engagement. Next year, the reserve league will change. So that means our seconds will play more locally, because the Borders teams, who have been struggling as well to get second 15s out, which is remarkable for some of the big names. And there's a real problem within that, and professional rugby's got a part to play in that. So the Borders teams will only stay within the Borders to play second 15s, which makes sense. You know, they may be playing a Thursday night or a Friday night to free up players to play on a Saturday as well, or certainly there's, you know, substitutes. You know, we've got to produce 5 credible front row for 2 teams. So that's a very difficult thing to do for a local community club. So things have to change. And, you know, I hope that over time the clubs will be listened to, and we'll get a better form of developing players and having players involved. And again, going back to my earlier point, we need to separate amateur rugby away from professional rugby, and build the club in an amateur status again for the communities, and let professional rugby go off and do what professional rugby needs to do, which is a great product, and it will do okay. But amateur rugby is about, you know, community development, and you know, providing a structure for young men and women to build a career out with rugby, but still be part of a team sport.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well said. Now, before we move on, is there anything you want to add about the stuff you're doing in the community or Stew Mel or anything else?
No, I think, no, I mean, we're just an open, friendly club that needs more people to come down and watch what we do. And from a sponsor's perspective, we're trying to change the way that people are involved in the club, connect them into the school, through the alumni, through our corporate social responsibility programs. And we want to be, you know, a more tight-knit group, and, you know, help the next generation, and that's connecting in with the schools and the other parts of the club to develop our community package.
Yeah, it sounds like you're heading in the right direction at least. Okay, let's move on to the stash section of the show. What's your favorite bit of stash you've ever received, Jason?
We were very lucky back in the 90s. Russell Athletic were trying to move into rugby, and we were I think we were the only club in Scotland that got Russell kit. And without a doubt, everybody, you know, the old grey, you know, sweatshirts, you know, American style college gear, that was always the best stash. Russell Athletic, without a doubt, was the best stash.
Oh, that is a very unique answer. I've not heard that before. Okay, what's your favourite kit of all time? So this can be any team from any era.
Yeah, my favourite kit of all time was my first 15 at Portobello High School. We had Alistair Cuthbertson, who was our coach at the time. He was a very big rugby league fan. So I brought back Portobello changed through every year the first 15 kit, and I was lucky to have the white top with the blue V with the yellow in between that V. So very rugby league orientated, but having the white top, white shorts, that was the favourite kit. And spending time as a young man, at 16, 17, having to go home and clean that kit every week and getting it pristine white was something that, I think everybody loved that kit. I'm very lucky to have it. It was my time to have it.
That sounds pretty special. What about an awful kit? Are there any terrible kits out there that you'd rather burn?
No, I don't think. I was trying to think of any bad stuff. Not really. I mean, I'm obviously passionate about Stewart's Melville and the red, black, and gold. No, there was nothing bad stuff. Although I was described as a big round tomate by Bill McLaren, which is my claim to fame playing at the Melrose Sevens. He described me going in at the corner as a big red tomato, which was never that endearing, to be perfectly fair.
That sounds a bit mean. Okay, so we're coming towards an end now. Is there anything else you want to say or any sort of closing thoughts?
No, I think, Bill being at Falkirk there and listening to him, and I think the local clubs are just really looking to ingratiate themselves to the local community and come along and get people involved. We need more people involved in the club. Our junior section run by Angus Kirk, so our Lions and Lionesses will be inclusive next year. So again, we're broadening our horizons and making sure that when we say we're a community club, it's for everybody in the community. And no matter what the situation or what the requirements are, we're open to helping and providing through the love of the game of rugby, which, as I say, has helped me all my life and opened so many doors. But I've also met so many people who have been so supportive, and it's my time now and the committee at Stewart's Melville to provide that support for whomever wants to come along and join the club.
Yeah, fabulous. Well said. I can completely echo everything you've said. And Stew Mel just seems like a lovely place. So get down there, people, if you're in the vicinity. Now, Jason, if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Just go through our website. So it's stewmel.com, and go through our website. You'll find all our social media aspects there. And you can email us, get in touch with us, send us an email through the website, and we're looking forward to it. We've had some great experiences this year with the Welsh men's choir. So again, we're doing lots of different things out with what's actually happening on the field. Okay,
fabulous. I can highly recommend it. Now, what we'll do, people listening, is link everything that we've mentioned today in the show notes, which you'll be able to find in one place, and that is at amateurrugbypodcast.com. So it just leaves me to say, Jason, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a thoroughly interesting and entertaining chat.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, there he goes. Some incredible stories there. I feel like I need to have you on again, Jason, to talk more about your New Zealand experience at the very least. So thanks very much for that, and thanks for everything you're doing in terms of trying to grow the game for everybody. Now, what do you think of last week's episode with John Brown from Ayr? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Lots about the Super Six in last week's podcast. You can contact me on email, hello@amateurrugbypodcast.com. And then please join me again next week when my guest will be Paul Cranston from Jed Forest RFC. And it's that time of year where I start thinking about the Great Rugger Run once more. And I'm looking for ideas. Where should I go this year? A 3 or 4 week journey around rugby clubs. A rugby heartland maybe somewhere that's not traditionally known for rugby, but still got a load of clubs. Let me know if you can. Again, on email, hello@amateurrugbypodcast.com. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, you can rate and review on your podcast player, like, share, retweet, all that jazz. But what I really like is if you mention it to someone in person next time you're down your local rugby club. But until then, get out and play.